All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle one of the biggest, most powerful ideas in all of philosophy. I'm talking about Albert Camus and his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. Seriously, this is a story that might just change the way you think about, well, everything. Struggle, meaning, and believe it or not, happiness. I want you to imagine something. Imagine being stuck with a job that's not just hard, but completely pointless, and you have to do it for eternity. Sounds like hell, right? But what if I told you that inside that very nightmare, that pointless struggle, there's a secret path to real freedom? That's the wild paradox we're going to unpack. So first things first, who is this Sisyphus guy? Well, the story comes straight out of Greek mythology, and he wasn't just some nobody. Nope, Sisyphus was a king, and he was famous for being wicked smart. So clever, in fact, that he actually managed to outwit and deceive the gods. And as you can probably guess, the gods, they were not happy about that. Not one bit. So for his little act of defiance, they cooked up a punishment specifically designed to be the ultimate form of psychological torture. They gave him a task that was impossible to finish, a grind that would never, ever end. I mean, just think about how soul-crushing this is. Every single day, he has to push this giant rock up a steep hill. He's straining every muscle, sweating, giving it everything he's got. He gets so close to the top, and then it just rolls all the way back down to the bottom. And he has to trudge back down and start all over, forever. Okay, so this is where Camus comes in and blows our minds. He looks at this ancient myth and sees us. He sees our own lives. You know, the daily grind, the 9 to 5, the repetitive chores, all the struggles we go through, only for it all to be wiped away in the end. Now, I know that sounds super depressing, but hang in there, because this is just the setup for his big idea. And to really get what Camus is saying about Sisyphus, we have to wrap our heads around his most important concept. It's called the absurd. This idea is the absolute core of his philosophy, and it's the key that unlocks this whole myth. Now, this is a really crucial point. For Camus, the absurd isn't that the world is meaningless. It's not that simple. The absurd is the conflict. It's the disconnect between two things: our desperate human need for meaning and a universe that just stares back at us in total silence. It gives us nothing. Think of it like this. On one side, there's us. We crave meaning, we search for order, we want to know why. And on the other side, there's the universe. Cold, silent, indifferent. It's not giving us any answers. The tension, that gap between what we want and what we get, that is the absurd. You know, for most of human history, we've found ways to patch over this uncomfortable feeling. We build these big systems, religions, philosophies, ideologies that give us neat answers and promise some ultimate purpose. But for Camus, these are all just ways of avoiding the problem. They're escapes. And this is where he throws down the gauntlet. He asks, but what if we just stopped? What if we stopped running? What happens if we actually face this absurd reality head-on, without flinching? So, according to Camus, once you realize you're living in this absurd situation, you're faced with a choice. There are really only 3 ways you can respond.
That's it, just 3 paths. And the one you pick, he says, defines not just how you live, but whether you're living an honest, authentic life at all.
Okay, let's lay them out. Option 1, suicide. Just check out of the game entirely. Camus says, nope, that's just giving up, not solving anything. Option 2, what he calls philosophical escape. This is where you jump headfirst into a religion or some ideology that gives you all the answers. He rejects that too, saying it's basically living a lie. So what's left? The third option, acceptance and revolt. For Camus, this is it. This is the only real, honest way forward. Now, when he says revolt, don't picture a physical rebellion. This is a revolt of the spirit. It's an internal defiance. It's making the choice to live with passion, with intensity, with your eyes wide open, especially because there's no grand cosmic point to it all. The meaning is found in the act of living, not in some prize at the end. And that brings us right back to Sisyphus and his boulder. How on earth does this idea of revolt apply to him? Well, this is where Camus hits us with his most shocking and honestly, most beautiful conclusion. So, what's the verdict on Sisyphus? Is he just this tragic, miserable guy stuck in his punishment forever? Or could there be something else happening? Something we're missing? And here's the line, it's one of the most famous in all of modern philosophy. Camus writes, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." Let that sink in for a second. It's a wild thought, right? But it's the entire point of his essay. So how is that even possible? Well, Sisyphus isn't happy because he's hoping one day the rock will magically stay up there. No. He's happy because he fully, completely accepts that it never will. And in that moment of acceptance, he robs the punishment of its power. He's no longer a victim. He is the master of his own reality. I mean, just look at that shift. Before, he's just a victim, a tragic figure trapped by the gods. But after he accepts his fate, he becomes a rebel. He's free. Why? Because the one thing the gods can't control is his mind, his attitude towards his struggle. Okay, that's great for Sisyphus. But what about us? How do we take this whole story and use it in our own lives, with our own boulders? Well, here's the breakdown. First, life is going to have struggles. That's a guarantee. Second, real freedom isn't getting rid of those struggles. It's about how you think about them. You can find real joy and purpose in the daily effort, in the work itself. Happiness isn't waiting for you at the top of the hill. It's found while you're pushing the rock. And that's the key, right? This isn't a downer philosophy at all. It's actually a challenge. It's a call to be courageous, to live your life fully without any illusions, and to love it, not just despite the struggle, but in some ways, because of it. So I'll leave you with this to think about. We've all got our own boulder, the daily grind, the challenges, the stuff we have to do over and over. The real question isn't if you have to push it. The question is, how are you going to choose to push it?